Hi, everybody. We'll be waiting 1 or 2 more minutes to let some participants in, and we'll start very soon.
Okay, hello, and thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Hands-on ChatGPT Training for Everyday Productivity. Many of you maybe are familiar with ChatGPT, maybe have used it on a regular basis, but perhaps are seeing some inconsistencies in its results. So our goal today is to help you use ChatGPT more efficiently and learn some tips and tricks that we have learned along the way to support your productivity with this specific tool. During this call, you're going to hear from myself, Landon Basham, and Katerina Mora. We are business analytics consultants with SVA Consulting. And after we highlight some specific goals of this call, we're going to take a sneak peek behind the curtain of how ChatGPT works a little bit, showcase how to write better prompts to alleviate maybe some of those stresses that you might be experiencing, and then conclude with some special features like projects and custom GPTs. So SVA, as a business consulting agency, we offer various practices from business evolution, business applications, data analytics and visualization, life sciences, and kind of the core of today's talk, AI enablement. And all of these practices are built to support your business and enhance its growth, and see how we can support you in the long term. Specifically within data and analytics, we center on four main pillars to support your business. First, we see data strategy, where we help align your existing data to support your larger business goals. Data architecture as a second pillar, where we work to unify and to connect your various data sources into something centralized so that all users can be able to manage data within your organization seamlessly. But before even being able to do things like we're talking today with AI, um, stuff with data visualization, right? We need to understand how is your data supporting you in a meaningful way, and what is your data showing you and telling you, and then that's something that we are able to support organizations with as well. And lastly, as we mentioned, AI enablement is kind of the core of today's webinar, where we want to teach you ways to be able to work more efficiently, more effectively, and quickly by using tools such as ChatGPT. So consider where you are today and your experience with ChatGPT or tools like ChatGPT. Maybe you were introduced to it when it first came out in late 2022, or maybe it's something that you've more recently come across. Likely you're still using it the same way that you first learned how to use it. But ChatGPT has gone through many iterations and evolutions over just the past few years at a rapid pace, and it's possible that you're still using it the way that you first did, and not acknowledging some of the changes that has happened behind the scenes. So today, and what we're seeing with ChatGPT now, it is more of an iterative tool where we're using it back and forth, as opposed to maybe how it first started and perhaps how some of you may be familiar with using it as just kind of asking a short question and thinking of it more like a search engine. So we want to like consider that evolution of ChatGPT and how we've gotten to where it is today and being able to support you with maybe learning some new things to expedite your work process. So we're going to take a little bit look here behind the scenes to consider how is ChatGPT actually functioning? What is it doing? But first we want to see how are people thinking about ChatGPT and in ways that it might be limiting their use with it. Um, a very common sort of like misconception or just misalignment here is thinking that tools like AI know everything, right? That they're always going to give you the exact truth based on what you ask it, but that simply is not the case, right? It's pulling in information and trying to support you the best it can, or maybe the user doesn't know the best way to ask its questions. We may be giving something like a little too unclear for it to give us the best response. Similarly, we're not like giving enough information and background for it, or as mentioned before, thinking of it kind of how we use Google and for it to like look up facts. While it may have similar capabilities, its purpose is being able to help you like reason through things a little bit more than just sharing information. So what this looks like behind the scenes is that we have what's called a large language model, or you'll hear us say LLM for short. So this is that engine, that brain that's functioning behind the scenes to do the work to get from your question or your prompt to what it is providing you. So the prompt is essentially just what you were typing into ChatGPT. It's the specific question or the task that you were asking. And in this case, I've asked it to explain what change management is. It's something that here around the office from time to time. Explain what it is. Just give me a real world example in simple 3 sentences. And so the LLM is taking that prompt and breaking it apart into small components, smaller than even the words, just taking the individual characters and piecing them together and thinking through all the ways that those words and those fragments have been presented before to try to give you essentially an educated outcome, to put those pieces together in a meaningful way to predict what it thinks the best result is for you based on your example. For us here, it's put this sequence together. It's like change management. It's how organizations help people. Here's an example. If you're rolling out a new CRM to include some trainings, communication, and even thinking of it like a GPS system where n- uh, no one learned to follow it, so people keep using the old highways and routes, right? So it's comparing it in some way to make it make sense to me, but it was piecing apart the original prompt in what it felt was the best way to do that. And the way it's doing that is because it has been trained under some capacity of being fed, thousands and millions of pieces of information from articles to websites, Wikipedia, things of that nature, and it's seeing how people have talked, how natural language looks and sounds, and it's taking your original prompt and trying to mirror that from what it has seen, what it has learned, to be able to provide the output that it has given. Now, I want to take just a quick note to give a disclaimer here that there's this idea of hallucinations where models like ChatGPT, they don't have 100% truth. They are making, again, like a statistically sound prediction. And a hallucination is just that, where it may be a slightly false output. So, you just want to make sure that as the human in this process, that you are the end voice in this. You want to review the response and see if it does make sense. If you need to like ask a follow-up question or perhaps do a tiny bit of extra research for validity's sake. But the models have been iterating and training very, very frequently that the outputs are getting better and better every day. So knowing that and thinking about how we're getting various outputs on the given prompt that you're asking, you're presenting ChatGPT, I want to take a look at a couple of quick examples here and consider how can we like maybe write the best possible prompt to get the best possible result. So I've asked ChatGPT here, what are key research priorities for a new therapeutic drug? Maybe I work for a pharmaceutical company and I just like need to help my brainstorming process here. And ChatGPT gives me like a thorough 9-step bullet point response here. A lot of information to read through, and that may be super helpful, like not a problem. But then I like altered my prompt a little bit, gave it slightly more details here. It's like, okay, I'm a research planner at a company. I want like early research priorities, just the top three, keep it simple and put them in a numbered list for me. I just want a starting point. And it gave me like a much smaller response. Now, like maybe you want the longer response. I mean, ChatGPT is built to give you a response no matter what, so it's going to try really hard to answer what you want. Um, but perhaps like this is the way that you would prefer. Like you don't need to read through 9 steps to see which ones make most sense to you, or maybe you need something more condensed. And the idea here is that the input obviously affects your output. And what we want to show you here in uh, this step is what we're calling a recipe. Essentially like how to make a great prompt following a specific recipe. And for us, that includes 5 ingredients, your persona, the context, the task, constraints, and format. And I'm going to use this sample prompt here to kind of highlight those individual ingredients. So what I see here is that you're a project manager. That is the persona that I'm literally telling ChatGPT to act like. So it has some knowledge base based on its training on what a project manager is, what it does, how they like respond, the way their tone might be. So that is the persona that I'm literally like telling ChatGPT. And then the context, like some basic background information, as much as you might be able to provide on what it is that you're doing. In this case, I have a team of like variety of audiences. I need a 30-minute meeting focusing on project priorities here. And then the one that we're most familiar with is the task, right? Like what is the actual thing that I want ChatGPT to help me with? And in this case, it is creating an agenda that specifically focuses on decision making and next steps. You might want to also consider ways that you want the response to feel or things that like not to include. In this case, we're calling them our constraints, right? So think about any protective information and data that should not be included, or if you want the language to be presented a certain way. In this case, assume a non-technical audience. Don't worry about business jargon. And lastly, the format that you want the response. Again, you could have it in bullet points like we saw before, could have it in numbered lists. It could put it in just prose, paragraph, text format in that way. Um, for me, I asked it to put it as a numbered list with time estimates, just so I can try to keep track within that 30-minute agenda. So we see like all of these ingredients included in this prompt. And I just want to make another quick note here that things like constraints and formats are actually something that you can adjust in personalization settings within ChatGPT, but they are often useful in writing a prompt. If you find that you like a certain format for everything, if you always want something in bullet points or as a table, you could have set that up in settings, but each prompt might require a slightly different constraint or format. So you likely want to consider that when you are creating your new prompts. It's okay if you have even just like a task level prompt. It's not like required that you have to include all five ingredients. You just want to be mindful of what your desired outcome is here. So if I'm saying summarize this report, and I would have attached a report to highlight any issues, it may easily do that. Like that's perfectly fine. You may get a substantial answer. But if I give it more of these recipe ingredients, I might get to my answer faster. I might skip the steps where I have to like talk back and forth with ChatGPT. And if I'm concerned about the efficiency of my workflow, I might want to consider like adding a little more detail into that original prompt. Here I have that I'm like working with an educational technology company and thinking about diverse audiences here. In this case, specifically working with like parents and teachers. And so I'm developing this new reading program, and I'm asking ChatGPT for some support on how to communicate that with my different audiences. Again, it might be sufficient with just some like context and then like what I'm actually asking, but maybe I give it some additional information. I want clarity. I want to focus on student outcomes, and I want to have it formatted as like Q and A's, so I can be thinking about that and how I might address questions to those different audience members. Or look at this example, if you're in financial services and you're working with clients and you want to, in this case, actually like do a role play scenario for a particular conversation. Um, the original, like what I'm calling basic prompt here, it includes some constraints as far as like saying it in a way that the client can understand. But I've added some additional pieces for the more effective part and asking it to have this role play where it knows I want to have a back and forth to actually play out the way that I'm going to communicate or how my response may sound so that it can help me navigate that conversation a little bit better. So again, the idea is like you want to use as much of the ingredients as you see fit to try to get to that answer as quickly as possible. And using those prompts will lead you in a lot of productive ways, the ways that you may be familiar with using ChatGPT already. But I'm going to hand it over to Katerina now to talk about maybe some parts of ChatGPT that you are less familiar with that could prove extra beneficial for you as you do your work day.
Yeah, thank you, Lyndon. So now we're going to cover two more tools that we can find in ChatGPT. Those are projects and custom GPTs. And this will take our usage of ChatGPT to the next level. So right now we can use it just as a search engine, just like we use Google, like typing in a question to ChatGPT to get a fast answer. You know how ChatGPT will compare like multiple sources for you, and most of our time is spent in this conversation box that we see on the screen. However, ChatGPT is not only an app that gives you answers, it can only also help you as a collaborator, as a teammate, helping you think through different workflows, having it adapt to a specific format or output that you want over time. And we can accomplish that through projects and GPTs. So first off, we have custom GPTs, and we want to think those as specialized GPT instances that you pre-train with instructions, behavior, and even sometimes you can add tools. So think of it as instead of like starting from scratch every single time that I want to put, for example, a proposal in a format, I can have a custom GPT with instructions on how I want that proposal to look like every single time. So I just have to jump into my custom GPT, paste the input in the prompt box, and get the output in that same format every single time without having to explain again and using the same prompt over and over. You can think of it as creating a specialist, so something that is very good at one task. A couple of examples are shown in the screen of how you can use custom GPTs. And then other examples might be, for example, a pitch deck co-writer with GPT. You can train it with the tone and the type of messaging that you like. It can also be a brand voice guardian in a way that you can add to this GPT multiple examples of how you want your post and your branding to be like in every time you generate a post, and have that custom GPT generate new posts for you, being consistent in the same messaging. Um, just think that ChatGPT, for example, it's like a general employee, but a custom GPT is a trained specialist for a specific task. Next, we're going to move on to projects. So, projects is a total different tool where you can organize all your related chats and files and notes all together. You can think of it as a shared folder in your computer where you like store all the meeting notes and recordings and any documents related to a client or a project, and that just keeps your workplace organized. What is very good about projects is that they preserve the context and reduce the re-explaining. And they also have this feature where you can share specific projects with team members so you all work from the same base and the same background information. So again, if you find yourself thinking like, oh, I've already explained this task to ChatGPT before, maybe you have a different input, but you want the same type of output and you have to explain the same set of instructions every single time. This is the moment where projects and custom GPTs come in handy. So you want to use a project when you want to keep all your related work in one place. You can drag chats and you can keep all the chats under one same folder. And then it's also helpful when you want the teams to collaborate on the same goals. So, for example, if Landon and I were working on a client project together and we want to keep our workspace organized, we could create a project on that client delivery and keep all the files that we have about the client in there to give ChatGPT some more information. And then I would be able to see what Landon is talking to ChatGPT about, and he would also be able to see my chats. And this way, the collaboration would be way easier instead of having to get on meetings or me sending screenshots to Landon to see what I'm getting into ChatGPT. On the screen, we have a couple of examples to create projects about. So, one of them, it could be about a specific client engagement, internal initiatives, research, or product launch. Again, it's just about grouping all the same information in one space. Then we have, on the other hand, custom GPTs, which are very helpful when we want to deliver consistent outputs every time and save our time by explaining the same rules every single time we're going into ChatGPT. Um, in general, we can think of using ChatGPT, custom GPTs for three different purposes. So custom GPTs are very good for writing and content generation. So every time that we need a task in the same tone, structure, or format to be consistent, here we can think of GPTs for proposal writers, email drafting, marketing copies. Another bucket for this would be knowledge and Q&A. So if we want to have a custom GPT where we can ask the same questions all over again, this is a great scenario for a custom GPT. An example could be having a product knowledge GPT where we have uploaded files about a specific product, and in the instructions we have said that, for example, we want very basic answers with clear instructions on how to get to different places. That could be one case, and then we can share that custom GPT maybe with a customer, or maybe it can be an internal use, and that person can go and ask questions about the product and get instant answers. And the third bucket, it's coaching. So this would be a situation when we want to use the custom GPT to teach or reinforce certain skills. One example that I'm using at the moment is I have a coaching GPT for a certification I want to get in the future. So what I've done for this custom GPT in specific is that I've set the instructions to be my trainer specialized in that specific software, that every time I ask a question, I want the answer to tell me like, where can I find this information in the study guide, what parts of the exam it would cover. And then I also want the answers to be very specific. And I've explained a little bit my background in using that software before. And then in the knowledge piece, I've added the study guide and some files about how to use that software. So every time I use this custom GPT to ask a question about a specific topic I might find in the exam, I get a simple answer. I get an answer on where the exam would cover the topic. And it just works because before I just had to go into a new chat every time and explain, I'm taking this certification in blah, blah, blah. I don't know a lot about this and I want the answers to be simple. This just saves me so much time and I get consistent answers every single time. Um, as a mental map, projects organize the work and custom GPTs help you standardize the thinking. So how do we create, first of all, the project? So we see on the left-hand side that we have that project section and we would click on new project. Then when we click, we have this window popping up where we would just enter a name to define the goal, or maybe if we're doing a client engagement, we would name it the client engagement name. And after that, we have the project settings. Um, some people use projects just to keep all the chats in one place. And what they really want to do is just to give it a name and share it with a teammate and get to work fast. That is completely fine. But if you really want to make the most out of projects, you can add a set of instructions to guide ChatGPT how to respond, what is the engagement about, just giving ChatGPT a little more, a couple of more hints to know how to interact with you. And then you can also upload supporting material. So, for example, on the screen, we can see that I've uploaded a file. And what this will help ChatGPT with is that it'll reference that document when generating a response. Instead of like thinking big box on everything that it's been trained on, if it has to go to the web, it knows that it can access those documents directly to generate better responses. Then we have the memory piece, which is that when you are using ChatGPT, every time that you click a new conversation, it's like starting a new email. When you're using Outlook, for example, it's a blank new page. And ChatGPT, unless you have the memory setting on in your settings, won't remember what you've talked about in the past or in other conversations. So projects are very good because they maintain a shared context across all project conversations. So if you've talked about a specific initiative or the way that you want the engagement to be, it'll keep that in mind and it'll reference that throughout conversations. Another thing that we don't have on the screen, but it's very helpful with projects is the team collaboration aspect. So you can share your project with different team members and they'll access the same context and the same materials. Everybody in that project folder will have the same set of instructions and files. You can even give them access to edit those if you want to do so. And it will just ensure consistency in understanding and the outputs, and it'll support that all of your team members get the same type of repeatable responses and align to what your instructions and files are. Then we'll move on to how to create GPTs. So we can see on the left-hand side that we have this Explore GPT button. If we click on it, we'll have this other window open up. And here's the GPT home screen. What you might see might be a little different depending on like what license you have with ChatGPT. Us in SVA, we have an enterprise license, so this is how it looks like for me. But for some other people, if you haven't created, for example, GPTs before, it'll directly will take you to GPTs, the GPT store, which is a place where people have created GPTs and they are just sharing it to the public for general usage. So if you want to create your own, you'll go ahead and click on that create button on the upper right hand side corner. And this will take us to the suite of where you create your GPT. So there are two different ways of creating a GPT. And I really enjoy that you have these two ways because it just makes it very easy to get started and get a GPT going in a matter of minutes. So the first setting that we have, or the first possibility of creating a GPT that we have, is the create mode. So this is a conversational way to create a GPT. You create it like you would talk to ChatGPT. You would say, okay, I want to make a custom GPT for me to make consistent marketing posts on LinkedIn. This is the type of tone I would like to use. And as you are talking to this create this ChatGPT instance, it'll slowly build the instructions for you and it'll adapt that GPT for you without you manually having to go into the configure aspect and typing out the instructions. Then the second setting that we have is if you have a clear idea of what you want to do and you don't need that quick start with the create aspect, you can go directly into configure. And this is where you program your GPT. So you'll give it a name, a description. The description is what appears on the right-hand side under the name of the GPT. In this case, this turns notes, transcripts, or images into detailed meeting recaps. Then I have the instructions where I outline how I want this GPT to behave, what type of answers I wanted to give back to me. Then we have the conversation starters, which is just a quick way for users to start and use this GPT. So these are the four buckets that we see on the right-hand side. Um, just to give ideas to the users on how they can use this custom GPT. And then we have knowledge. So this is where we would upload files. Going back to the product Q&A example, this is where you would upload the files of your product or the way that you want that product delivery to be like. So ChatGPT can reference them and give you answers based on that PDF, whatever file that you upload. In this example that I have over here, so I'm building a GPT to help me do meeting recaps. So one of the tasks that are like most tedious to me and they take a lot of time and maybe they're not like the highest value for me too is creating meeting recaps. So I have a calendar full of meetings every day and sometimes I can attend those meetings and I take notes. Sometimes I cannot and I just get a meeting recording or a meeting transcript. So I've set this GPT to turn my notes or transcripts or even handwritten notes into a structured way of an answer that I want. So, for example, in this GPT, I've asked the outputs to be in these sections: main topics discussed, next steps, mentions of Katarina. So for me, that's the only thing I care about in the meetings, right? I want to know what topics were discussed, the next steps, and if I was mentioned, that is something I have to pay special attention to. So I've teach this ChatGPT to specially mention it out to me. So the way that I make this custom GPT work is that when I go into the chat box, I can paste my notes from a meeting. I can take a picture if I've taken handwritten notes and upload that picture. I can copy and paste it if I have taken notes on my computer, or I can also insert a transcript that I have of the meeting. And what ChatGPT will give back to me as an output is this clear summary of main topics, next steps, and mentions of Katarina. One thing we can notice in these instructions are that I'm using that prompting recipe. So I'm giving this custom GPT enough context of what I want, what I want the output to look like. I'm also giving it specific instructions so we can see towards the end that I'm saying that when information from images is unclear or partially illegible, it flags that uncertainty explicitly. So I'm telling this custom GPT specifically, like, please do not make up facts. Try to read my handwritten notes, but if you cannot understand it, don't make up a random topic to be discussed or a random mention of Katarina. Um, and what we can see on the next slide is the type of output I get. So this is a screenshot of me just copying and pasting a transcript. And the answer that I get is exactly in that same format that I have specified in the instructions. So I'm able to see the main topics discussed, the mentions of Katarina as well. And again, the way I've trained this custom GPT for me is to be able to read transcripts, read messy notes, and even read pictures that I've uploaded of my manual handwritten notes. here on the next, in this picture, we can see the different topics that I've discussed. What's great about custom GPTs is that honestly, you start building one and a lot of ideas will just come up to you about different processes that you can use custom GPTs for. Again, think of ideas for writing, content generation. For example, there might be a document that you always want to structure the same way, like a proposal. Another good use case are knowledge and Q&A situations. So, for example, you might want to build a custom GPT for an onboarding assistant where in the instructions you have, please provide very simple answers for someone who's new to the company. And then in that knowledge piece, you can add all the information related to the different policies, internal policies that you have, instructions on, for example, how to enter time. And this custom GPT will have all the information ready for users to just ask any type of question on the information that you've provided. And you can also say in the instructions, please don't make up any facts if it's not in the knowledge or in the instructions. So you make sure that this custom GPT is not giving the wrong information to the end users. What I would like everybody to keep in mind too is that you don't have to wait for a specific ideal scenario to get started with custom GPTs. It can be just a task as simple as this meeting recap assistant. It's a very simple task, but it takes maybe like 30 minutes of my day that I would just be spending doing this, and I can do it in 5 minutes or less with this custom GPT. And after I built this one, I've just came up with a lot of different ideas to implement custom GPTs for other areas of my work. So, as we wrap things up, we wanted to show you a couple of the offerings that we help our clients on their AI journey. So, we think that we want to help clients in any way there are in their AI journey, whether that might be at the very start, just knowing that you need to get started and do something with AI, but you don't really know what to do, to the other end, which is I know I want this tool, and SVA could help you building that specific tool. So the AI strategy and adoption alignment cycles are about helping teams gaining clarity before they invest. Again, for some organizations, the challenge is not the capability, it's just alignment, agreeing on where AI matters and what to do next, what's actually worth of doing next. So this work for us is about aligning leadership on goals, identifying valuable use cases, and decide what tools or use cases make sense to start with. Then we also have the quick start AI strategy, which are for companies that might be a little bit further along. They believe in the value of AI, but they want to narrow the focus. Then we have AI toolset builds out. So those are for teams that already know the specific tool that they need. They just need a partner to build it. So we help building automation, software with AI, using analytics tools like Tableau or Snowflake that have AI built in. We also help building machine learning models to generate predictions or forecast. And last but not least, we also have our enterprise Gen AI trainings. So sometimes companies just want to get people using some Gen AI tools. And in those cases, we help with AI enablement. So this is about helping leaders decide where AI should be used, training teams on using tools like ChatGPT or Copilot with real examples, and putting some basic guardrails in place so people use it consistently and save every time. A little bit more about our generative AI enablement program. So, when we talk about this program, we're talking about helping teams use generative AI in a way that it's practical, consistent, and helpful for their day-to-day work. That can mean training, but it also can mean figuring out what tools make sense in the first place. So, we divide this offering into three different phases. The phase one, it's about executive AI vision. So this is about alignment, taking a look at how teams are working today, how people are using AI, and where it could realistically help. We also help aligning leadership on goals and putting some guardrails in place, like an acceptable use policy for that AI tool. The second phase would be the training and development part. So this is the hands-on part where we do role-based trainings using tools like ChatGPT or Copilot. And then the third phase for amplification and support is about making sure that that usage sticks. So we support teams that have gone through the trainings through office hours and helping them just refining and improving their use with that Gen AI tool and making sure that that tool becomes part of how work gets done in the company. So thank you so much for joining us today. Now we'll leave some time to answer any questions that you might have. But feel free to sign up for a free 30-minute consultation to continue the AI conversation with one of our team members. We'll also be doing another webinar in February on data strategy. We'll be sharing more details on that webinar soon. And you also have our emails on the screen in case you have any questions. So, Landon, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, a common question, and I see it, is about the storage of chats. Like anytime that you might be prompting ChatGPT, where you want to know if you can go back to that prompt, for example. It does save on kind of the left sidebar over there, on the landing page, and it might depend on your company's uh, uh, version of ChatGPT, sorry, and maybe like if they have restricted it to maybe like 60 days or something for storage capacity reasons. But it will save your chat so you can refer back to it and you can even search for them if you're looking for something specific. So that's a very convenient way if you're not utilizing projects, for example, and you were just doing something kind of quick chat wise, you can see that on your left hand side for future reference. Um, what about the custom GPTs? Katerina, I know you had walked through that, and as far as if other people are using it, um, who has access, or like can other people see things that you are talking with your custom GPT about?
Yeah, so when you are creating a custom GPT, you have the option to share it with other people. And there are different types of settings when sharing the custom GPT with other people. So you can give people the edit access where they can modify the instructions. Maybe they want to add more files. You're just basically giving them full access on that custom GPT so they can modify it. Another type of access is when you just want people to use that custom GPT, but you don't want them to even see what the instructions are like or you don't want them to be able to upload any files. There's another type of access for that that you can share with the users, and this way they can just use that custom GPT, but they won't be able to get inside and see the instructions and the files. Another thing on that is that when you're sharing a custom GPT with someone, they're not able to, that person who has created the custom GPT, the admin, is not able to see the conversations that you're having with that custom GPT. The only thing that they're able to see is the number of conversations. So there's a setting where you can click and it'll show you like 20 conversations had been had with this custom GPT, but you cannot go into the specific conversations or get any data about what those conversations were about.
Great, thank you. Also a good question in the chat here is, does ChatGPT or is ChatGPT industry agnostic? Can prompts help with specific industry questions? Excellent question. I'll start with that, and then maybe Katarina can build on it. Yes, it is industry agnostic in the sense that you can ask it anything that you see fit. This is where I feel the recipes persona is vital. Where if you want to ask a specific question related to a specific industry, mirroring a specific person or level of in the organizational hierarchy, you tell ChatGPT that information. If you say, you are the CEO of XYZ versus the intern of the same organization, you're going to get different responses. But if you tell it that it's a CEO of a pharmaceutical company or a bank or a CPA firm, it's going to adjust its responses based on its knowledge base, based on its training of that specific information, of those industries, and give you an output the way that it thinks and imagines someone in that field would respond.
Yeah, another thing to add to that is that with the custom GPT, you can also have a specific like person or yeah, person would be the best way to describe it, a specific person specialized in an industry or a methodology. For example, you're trying to engage in a project and you're trying to do the agile project management methodology, and maybe you don't know a lot about that methodology. You can set a custom GPT to kind of coach you on how to go through the meetings and the engagements. And the way you can do it is by creating that custom GPT, telling it that it's an expert agile project manager. And you could even in the knowledge part, you could upload some files related to content about the agile methodology. So ChatGPT has that as context and can generate better answers to keep you to coach you on how to use that methodology best. This could be for any methodology and even for industry. So if you were working with a specific industry that you are not very familiar with, you could upload files or in the instructions of that custom GPT to instruct the ChatGPT to answer from that point of view or help you think through how they would react to certain things. And that could be all done with the training piece of that custom GPT.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think just kind of another plug for custom GPTs, where if you are working, obviously like in your industry, you're always expecting the same types of thinking or using the same types of frameworks. It may benefit you to utilize a custom GPT to get those types of responses. Um, Looking at another question coming in here. Um, okay. Katerina, during your custom GPT walkthrough, and you had like the meeting notes as your example. The question is like, do we believe this can work on different tools, like different AI tools, like Gemini or Claude, Copilot, like other things like that, or is there a difference in performance or language in the outputs? That is a good, excellent question, a common question for those of us who they are familiar with other LLMs and other AI models out there. Um, Katerina, would you like to speak to that one?
Yeah, so for custom GPTs in specific, I know that, for example, Copilot has a very similar tool. It's not named custom GPTs. I think it's Copilot Studio or Enterprise Agents, which is sort of the same as the custom GPTs, but in the Copilot environment. What we are seeing is that every tool, so every chatbot, and we can think about ChatGPT, Claude, that's from Anthropic, Copilot, even Grok, which is the AI chatbot by Elon Musk. They kind of perform a little bit differently. We think that ChatGPT is just a very good all-around tool, so it's good for um, almost everything at this point. The models are very well trained. But for example, some people might like to use Copilot because Copilot in specific, it's connected to your Microsoft environments and your Microsoft apps. And I'm able to, for example, ask Copilot, can you tell me what my past conversations with Landon on email have been about? And it's able to go into my Outlook and do that search for me. Another thing is that every chatbot has been trained on answering in a specific way. So sometimes we might see that Claude, it's more detailed in its responses. It's a little bit more polite. Whereas if you have used Grok, Grok, the answers that it might give you are a little bit more funny, more direct and straightforward. That is just the way that that LLM has been trained at.
Yeah, hopefully that answers that question succinctly. I mean, I think um, you know, many of us maybe experiment with the different tools to see, and honestly, I would push towards that. We're coaching on ChatGPT today because we see that being a common model that people are using. And it's something that, yeah, we see has like a widespread use. But if you are familiar and you are interested in other tools, the best way to get better at them is to experiment with them. You're likely going to get similar responses if you're doing something like meeting summaries. But if you expand beyond that, you might see more differences if it becomes more nuanced or like, something like image creation, for example, is arguably going to be vastly different from model to model because it's just thinking differently. It's going to produce images slightly different, for example. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in immediately or as we've been discussing these. So I'll go ahead and thank you again for joining us today. Thanks for those who may be reviewing the recording. If you have additional questions, feel free to email either Katerina or myself with SVA Consulting, and we'd be more than happy to further this conversation, this discussion around AI and ChatGPT in particular. But again, thank you all and have a great rest of your day.